First of all, I would like to thank Lemhanas for inviting me to share some thoughts that I have about the issue and the topic that has been assigned to me. As mentioned by Ibu Kuri, I will be focusing more on the Indonesian view and the Indonesian interest on the issue on ocean or maritime related domain. And probably I would start with from the conclusion that Dr. Heath mentioned, that is compartmentalizing cooperation with China and the US would be the best way to go. And it seems to me that I could not agree more with that. And then my thought is basically because the issues, the economic dimensions are very complex, so we cannot afford actually to choose either one because there are nuances in our policies and also our interests as well. Now, if I may, I do not prepare PowerPoint slides, but the structure of what I'm going to speak about in the next 20 minutes, that is, I'm going to highlight. Of course, you are around the table, probably know more than me about this. The value of this economic related benefit of our ocean, i.e. the blue economy. What is it and how big it is for Indonesia. But then I will discuss issues for Indonesia with regard to at least 2 points. Number one, the sustainability of our marine resources, and second, of course, maritime security and threats to these economic activities. And the third part would be how we're going to move forward, the way forward for us in Indonesia when it comes to our policies on issues and regional architecture on this issue of sustaining our marine resources. Now, the value of blue economy. When we are talking about geoeconomics, for sure it entails the value of economics from the perspective and consideration of geography. In the simple setting, in a state level analysis, geoeconomics basically means to simply consider the perspective of one's state economy in relations to its geographical surrounding, state neighbors, regions, and so on. Now, in viewing the geoeconomics of Indonesia's blue economy, therefore, key consideration to be made, I think, is about how Indonesia's marine economy can be viewed in terms of our geographical location, vis-a-vis other countries and actors in the region, especially those closest to us and most exposed geographically to Indonesia. That is direct region of Southeast Asia and East Asia. Although when we are talking about in the Pacific, the Indian Ocean part should be included in the equation, but I think we have to acknowledge more of the attention have been given to the Pacific part of our ocean. And then, of course, we also need to consider and observe the many dynamics surrounding the relationship between countries and actors in our regions. Can be about regional integration, ASEAN come to mind, also governance, regional governance on the issue, and international governance, and relationships of countries' interaction overall. Now, for countries in East Asia and Southeast Asia, the blue economy constitutes of a large portion of our economies. East Asian seas is home to 80% of global aquaculture, 60% of the world's captured fisheries, and hosts 90% of the global trade conducted via shipping, as highlighted as well by Dr. Heath in his presentation. For certain countries, including Indonesia, the ocean economy or blue economy constitutes of over 20% of its GDP. So it's really, really big. We have to really highlight this. Data from ADB 2021, quoting PIMSI, shows how Indonesia's ocean economy accounts for 28% of our GDP. So we could not emphasize more how important our ocean is to our economy. Now, the importance of the ocean economy for countries like us has meant that the security of the ocean also represent our livelihood and survival. Not only is Indonesia's ability to sustain our growth is dependent on our ability to produce and extract from our ocean resources, but day-to-day ordinary Indonesians also find themselves dependent towards the ocean. So we are not only talking about high politics, or geopolitical tensions and so on, but the livelihood of our very own citizens, in large part dependent on the ocean as well. So for instance, reports have estimated that around 80% of Indonesia's population can be categorized as being dependent on fishery resources. Even more directly related, 60% of the Indonesian population approximately live inside or around coastal areas. So this is our livelihood. Now for Indonesia, key to making use the full potential of our blue economy is to sustain the level of production, while also securing our capacity to produce and trade the marine economic resources. Here lies to Indonesia's interest to manage the sustainability of our marine resources and to maintain a secure, stable, rules-based, and open oceans. So we are not talking about geopolitical issues. It cannot be separated from our own domestic economic issues. Indonesia will not be able to exploit the full potential of our marine economy without a secure, stable, and open ocean. All the more so surrounding its direct maritime region. Indonesia will be faced with issues regarding supply shortages, energy, and food will be crucial if our oceans are not safe, and thus will face problem in safeguarding our own economic growth. Now, what are the issues for Indonesia in this regard? Number one, sustainability of marine resources. One big issue is overfishing. Right. At the state level, two key issues surrounding the development of blue economy in the region have arisen. First are issues related to sustaining level of production, as I mentioned earlier. Second is to ensure that this production, including its extraction activities, remains optimal and secure, free from threat of external actors, whoever they may be. The first issue relates very much to the sustainability in relation with the possible future collapse in face of the vast rise of demands to sea products. In terms of sustainability of production over the last few decades, the demand towards ocean resources have grown to a tremendous level. Global production of fish and seafood, for instance, have quadrupled over the past 50 years. Data of capture fishery production between 1960 and 2018 from our Word in Data, sourced from the FAO, have indicated the difference 58 years can make. In 1960s, capture fishery production in East Asia and Pacific, as an indicator, accounts to 11.5 million tons. But in 2018, the numbers has amounted to 40.69 million tons. The rise in numbers of seafood produced from fish farming or aquaculture is even more staggering, from 1.5 million tons in 1960 to 94.6 million tons in 2018. So these are the demand for fish products. As a side note, if I may, Indonesia's capture fishery production accounts for around 7% of the global market capture production. This is, I think, quite a significant number. Back in 2019, the capture fishery sector alone represents 1.6% of Indonesia's GDP, according to the data from FAO. So again, we cannot highlight it more about the importance of our economy and our relative dependence on our ocean resources. The other side of the coin, and likely more importantly, is that all the data showed that the increased pressure on fish stocks around the globe for Southeast Asian countries, with a report from 2018, let me see, there is the data from the Asia Foundation. For Southeast Asian country, a report from 2018 suggested 64% of fishery resources base across the region being at medium to high risk from overfishing already. A report from 2018 suggests how 90% of Indonesian boats draw their catch from areas that are already overfished and overcrowded with boats. Second issue for Indonesia, of course, is maritime security and threats to extraction and seaborne trade, traditional and non-traditional security issues. The stressor to sustaining our level of production is related to the capacity to ensure optimal production from the means. The resources are there to exploit for the country, and that the activities and trades conducted at sea are secure from threats. So this is the same side, the two sides of the same coin. For Indonesia, as also mentioned by Dr. Heath in his presentation, the existence of important strategic sea lanes of communication, the Malacca Strait, Singapore Strait, Sunda Straits, Lombok Straits, the Ombai Straits, and the Wetar Straits, puts Indonesia in a strategic spotlight of East Asia's blue economy and regional maritime geostrategic calculation. The most prominent one, Malacca Strait, has been well known as the busiest choke point in the region, hosting more than 60,000 vessels annually, some of which are of crucial importance, shaping crude oil, where 90% of the total volume flowing through South China Sea will transit, connecting the suppliers, traversing through the South China Sea, traversing from the Indian Ocean to their consumer in markets across East Asia. So disturbance in and around these straits will likely amount to shocks in regional and even global economies. And first and foremost, probably our own economy. The fact that Indonesia and Southeast Asia are home to strategic maritime choke points thus often puts the issue of blue economy, when viewed from the geoeconomic lens, to be closely related also with geopolitical and security consideration. This is mainly because the strategic seas and their importance have also become naturally part of other countries' national interest. Some would like to keep them open and secure, while others would like to use them and exploit their resources to safeguard their own people. The simple trait has given born to many of the geopolitical dynamics Indonesia is facing surrounding our seas. Now, geopolitical dynamics of the 21st century have increasingly shifted to cover more maritime dimension. Albeit remaining chapters of land wars, like the war in Ukraine right now, continues, but the rise of powers like China and India have been heavily denominated in maritime settings. So transforming the ocean as theaters of major power competition in their pursuit of national strategic interest, especially if compared with the land-based struggle for power in the 19th or 20th century. So key reason for this is the vast potential of the ocean, the vast room of unexplored and undermined areas at sea, often less covered in the conventional sense of international rules and laws, has given states room to compete. But if I may remind our fellow Indonesians and friends from the region, the DNA of Southeast Asia is actually always how to shift area of competition into area of cooperation. And ASEAN has been doing this for its life, trying to shift the region. Of course, competition will be there, but our DNA has always been to transform this into sets of cooperation. So again, what has been concluded by Dr. Heath, I think we need to highlight that our region, maritime issue in the region, in my opinion, should not be defined by the state of affairs between US and China. It should be defined by our own economic interests as well. We cannot escape from the geopolitical competition for sure, but we should not be defined by this geopolitical competition because the issues are too complex for us in terms of the economy and our own livelihood. Power projections at sea have also been observed to be increasing in frequency. At least if we look at the data, judging from the data, the number of missions and operations from various countries conducted around the South China Sea. With the increased number of interaction between countries at sea, posturing as being against one another, this also has increased the scale of potential escalation from misperception at sea. And that is why I think a forum like this can be used to dispel all of this, at least some of this misperception. What are the recent examples of this potential escalation? Number one, data shows military operation around the South China Sea has been increased. I should not, data are over there. Number two, US and Chinese naval bases exist, suggesting potential sea curtains in times of military tension that would suspend economic relations and economic transportation. Number three, most recent one, Chinese escalation from just one high-profile visit by United States official to Taiwan. You know, with one state visit, there is escalation on the Chinese part. So, these seemingly grand dynamics happening further away from Indonesian shores are nonetheless important for Indonesia's marine economy. Not only direct impacts such as ecological damage, should a confrontation in the South China Sea happens, that Indonesia's marine ecology will also bear the burden of, remember, the ocean is the ultimate one that will bear the burden, and Indonesia would probably one of the most affected ones. Southeast Asia and East Asia are in fact sub-regions, crucial to the export of our marine economic products. So our export and import in these marine-related products are dependent on the ocean and through Southeast Asia and East Asia. Lastly, what then have been done by Indonesia so far to keep the level of production, but at the same time to secure our ocean? Number one, I think rules and regulations, domestic rule and regulations are abound. Indonesia's regulation to the management of marine economy are plenty. Most directly related among them would be the laws concerning resources management and protection, Law number 45 of 2009 and Law number 32 of 2009. And we have also the laws to cover import-export policy, restriction and limitation, also related to marine production. Under the current government, as we all know, there's this doctrine of a global maritime fulcrum that then followed by the publication of Indonesia's National Ocean Policy in 2017. And in the ocean policy dictates on sustainable development. So sustainable part is important. That development of various economic activities must be implemented based on sustainable development principle. And this needs to be highlighted when it comes to cooperation with our partners. And we also have Indonesia's Maritime Policy Plan of Action and the Plan of Action of Indonesia's Maritime Policy 2021-2025. So the new government after 2024 needs to continue this.
1 more minute, Dr. Firman.
Lastly, very lastly, the regional architecture. Indonesia is a member of various regional and global arrangements on fisheries, food and agriculture organization, the UN Environment Program, and so on and so forth, the UN Fish Stock Agreement, and so on. We are regional membership in Regional Fisheries Management Organization, membership in the Regional Plan of Action for Combating Illegal, Unreported, and Unregulated Fishing, and also regional platforms such as IORA and so on. But the problem with this is eventually whether the leadership of the country will carry on and will understand how important our marine is, our ocean is, and how we strike a balance when the geopolitical tension happen. Second, of course, Indonesia would not stand alone, could not stand alone, and we have regional groupings, ASEAN. Indonesia probably is not as powerful to challenge either side, or US and China, but with ASEAN as a grouping, we may have some leverage. Now the question is, will Indonesia be interested in leading ASEAN once more? Thank you.